So hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about Throne and Liberty and the West. Chris isn't so much a hype guy, which is actually a really good balance between the two of us. So most of this is going to be getting him caught up on what we know about Throne and Liberty. But there's also some really interesting things that they're doing as a game and a publisher and what we look at 2023. And I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of his perspective and takes. If you guys don't know Chris, follow him over on Gaming Kinda. Check us out here as a part of our live shows. We typically run these Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. And this is our Friday live show. And Throne and Liberty kind of coming in two parts. So first things first that Chris needs to know, Throne and Liberty was originally Lineage 3. So Lineage 1 and 2 exist out in Korea. It's got a brand name recognition. And for some reason, they want to throw that SEO out the window and they completely changed the game. But it is still kind of that Lineage root. And so this is going to be a Korean-based mmorpg built on Unreal Engine. And it's coming out, they say, first half of 2023. They have not announced the Western publisher, but I could give you one guess, and I'm going to see if you get it right out the bat. Who do you think is publishing this game in the West?
I assume Amazon's the one picking up every unknown person.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Like they have a ton of bandwidth to pick up games and publish them, and they have no backlog of in-house studio or existing relationships to fill that bandwidth. Mm-hmm. So if you are looking for a AAA level publisher available at indie level introductions, it's like, how do I meet an all-star who will also meet me for coffee? Like Amazon will take your call because they are looking to make headway in the publishing space. It almost feels like New World is really just a Wii Sports, where it's an in-house demo that just shows what they can do. New World does not even at this point, seeing how much money they're putting into developing New World and the fact that the monetization just really never kicked in like I thought it would.
Yeah.
It feels like it's Wii Fit, Wii Sports. It feels like it's a mixtape to say, here's what we can do. Call us if you have a game.
Yes. And that's exactly what I said. Like New World as a set piece for AWS, their Amazon Game Services, Amazon Web Services, the scalability. We're seeing that already with Blue Protocol. Throne and Liberty is their next big announcement. I'm going to guess that's going to be sometime in March, because here's also what's happening, because this is what's I think is kind of interesting. We really don't know much about this game. This could be a positive or a negative, right? Because when it comes down to it, their final test is an in-person physical test in South Korea. There's no online downloading, data mining, any of this stuff. You physically have to go to the spot to help conduct the test, which there has been mixed kind of reception to this, right? Because are you hiding something is one narrative, which they could be, right? Like, hey, no one's actually seen and played the game. Turns out it's not well, or it's that the other side of the other narrative, which is actually like where I kind of fall into this perspective. It's that there is really a lot that we don't know. So it's not a solved game. It's not a game that when it comes down to it, I know more about Blue Protocol through data mines already based off of client leaks and things like that than we really do know for Throne and Liberty outside of what they've revealed with certain gameplay and more. And also I said I'd shout out to Jordan and he says he's the biggest Throne and Liberty fan for 2023. So thank you so much for joining us live, Jordan. I appreciate that.
So the media tour for Final Fantasy XIV is a closed beta, like that.
Exactly.
It's wildly closed. The first time you and I were invited to one, it was on their physical hardware, and we
flew there.
We flew there on our own dime, and to get the chance to play. They said, we have a computer that you guys are welcome to play it on, but we're not going to pay for your air travel. You got to get here. And so we went. Actually, the exact response was, we'd love to have you if you're in the area. And so then we're like, all right, we're not in California, but we can be.
Yeah. That's a solvable problem before 2020.
And so then the next media tour we were invited to was you basically VPN'd into, you basically remote logged into their hardware again, which was on a private server. And these are incredibly precise alpha state servers. Like they They are spun off the development cycle. And so like there may have been decisions they've made since then. You may run into bugs that are already fixed. And they are wildly limited. Maybe they've stripped the names off of NPCs. They've removed quest data. They've removed audio files, anything that they're not ready for you to see or they think would be spoilery. So even if you had unlimited access to it, the amount of information you even could mine has been stripped out. They're demo clients. And so we've seen this with a game that we didn't think was trying to hide anything maliciously. So like I am willing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, having been through that experience. The other side of it, though, is a very like Forspoken feel, keeping Square Enix as our example here, where
why would we do that? Must be fans.
there are certain industry trends that if you buck all of them, the hairs on the back of your neck should stand up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think that's
a little weird.
The best advice for gamers in that regards is not to put your entire like joy and happiness like in the success of a game, and that ends up always being the case. Like if you go in with this mindset, like, well, you know what, I'm gonna put either in some money. We don't really even know the monetization structure of that, and that's where the narrative in and of itself is like, well, we don't know how they're going to monetize us, but they have a wide range of monetization options. They publish, Guild Wars, which a lot of people really enjoy that game and enjoy its monetization structure. But then they also publish other games that people feel are maybe a little bit more on the predatory side of things. So it's like, just like, oh my gosh, Square Enix, because like you look at Square Enix's full library and then you're like, yeah, we've got that too. And they are all kind of just as a part of this portfolio, as opposed to like just narrowing it down into like one specific idea. But I think it's interesting because with this game that's been so long in development, and the fact that it has, I would say, been so underhyped from a lot within the community, seeing like this kind of start into 2023, a lot of people, putting that new MMO hope out there, which in my mind has traditionally been a curse, because there is going to be a lot of hype regarding a new MMO, because it felt like we kind of came out of this big valley and gap between like new MMO, style. And now all of a sudden this year alone, Blue Protocol, Throne and Liberty, like I'm probably even forgetting a handful. I mean, I don't know, the day before ish, like we'll see if that ends up becoming anything. But then also like they just had their fourth quarter, kind of result, and like announcing even more MMORPGs. And we also saw like Tower, like we've seen even in the mobile and more gotcha space, Tower of Fantasy kind of stepping in to kind of play and fill in that gap, trying to maybe take a little bit from Genshin. I think all those two games, Genshin and Tower, are really just going to help boost into Blue Protocol, which will have a more kind of established kind of, meteor experience, at least from what's all to be believed. But the trailer from and what they've released for Throne of Liberty, just to kind of catch you up to speed in terms of what can you expect out of the gameplay, what is there going to be, what are they doing, are they doing anything new or interesting? And it's like with any MMO out there right now, like they're kind of looking at a couple different things and bringing those in. It's coming to PC and console, Xbox and PS5 confirmed, controller support confirmed. Crossplay has not yet been confirmed, but it seems pretty strange because they'll also stream this game to you over your mobile phone. Now, it's not running on your phone; it's running in a streaming service elsewhere, and they'll stream that to your phone. So they're not like, oh, and then here's the mobile version of that that is now running on a phone physically. And then on that note itself is that it looks like there might be kind of a hybrid tab target, like we've seen maybe with Ashes or even with Guild Wars. So some people have expressed a little bit of disappointment that it isn't a full action, MMORPG, but it does have the classless base system that New World offers. So you've been playing New World right now. You've got the two weapons that kind of define your class. This is the same aspect. You have two weapons, and based off the weapon, then your skills are then prevalent, which also feels very akin to Guild Wars, in my opinion. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So when you start to talk about classes and weapons, like at first it's going to be what's your initial offering and what is the pace at which you're going to update these, which immediately makes me ask a question of, is this like Lost Ark, where there's enough based on another game that we are pulling from an existing backlog, or is this an all new IP? Like, are we following a release schedule in Korea where they've got 2 years in the wings, and so they're going to be able to kind of slam it. Like that was the advantage Lost Ark had.
Yeah,
that they could hit a patch cadence that was unnatural because it wasn't real patches.
Yeah, and within Lost Ark, as everybody started to cool off the game, oh boom, here's the new raid. Oh, okay, I'm back in. And in and of
literally
itself,
just watching analytics number.
Right.
The moment it drops, you could just toss something out because you have just a whole set of patches.
You have years of pulling that in. And so when it comes down to that, no, like Throne and Liberty is launching globally across the planes. So there is not a roadmap that people have, and that was something that truly was an advantage to Lost Ark and continues to be so. It had the ability to have a fan base, have plenty of content, continue to roll that out as a part of that release, so that you're constantly feeding. At some point, just like with Phantasy Star and more, you do get into parity, but at that point you've already really established yourself that people are like, oh, I already know what this game is. I already either like this game or I don't like this game, and going from there.
Parity doesn't feel bad in games that have a backlog. When you look at games like Guild Wars, World of Warcraft, and Final Fantasy that have 10 years of backlog, and somebody goes, I'm bored with this patch schedule, fans of the game will go, okay, but have you done all this other stuff? And so like the nice thing is by the time Lost Ark hits parity, it's come out so fast that for the average player, they're just picking off the cherries and the cream off the top from every patch. Which means there's all this other stuff. It's like, well, have you gone and gotten all your cocoa seeds? Like, there's so much that you could go do to dive deeper into Lost Ark. And that's a real advantage that, like, a new game can't afford to do that. Like, people think Ashes of Creation is going to come in with this huge backlog, but you're going to be excited to release it. You're going to want feedback. My God, can you imagine if you were just bushwhacking through the development process and you're just macheting in this direction? And you get all the way to this pond and everybody's like, we should have gone to that pond. Like, well, the fork for that was 2 miles ago. So like the advantage of releasing is you want that feedback to get started, which Lost Ark had. They just had it from their Korean base. And so you want that. You don't want to get that far off. And you also want to start recouping your money. Like from a restaurant standpoint, like that's great if you can afford to do a couple of soft opens and cook for some families, maybe have some private events. But at some point, you're ready to have customers. If you've never been to a soft open in a restaurant, sometimes they're free. You sit down, the whole evening is free. All the food is prepared, and the experience can be, I mean, it's like going to a barber school to like let them cut your hair. Like, yeah, the haircut's free. It's not going to be your best haircut. And maybe if it was this time, that's great. Go back again. It won't be your best haircut twice in a row. Like, it's like, there's a reason it's free. And so at some point that restaurant's like, okay, we've learned enough. We're not done making mistakes, but we've learned enough. We're ready to start collecting people's money. And so I just kind of wondered about that because that's going to be the uphill battle here. Like you're starting to describe the content types, and that's great. You're going to have dungeons, you're going to have classes, you're going to have weapons, you're going to have cosmetics, you're going to have quests, you're going to have story, voice acting, a world to explore, all these things. That's awesome. Yeah. The MMO, that's the basics for an MMO. How are you going to have enough? Because while the total quantity of hours available in New World on launch was probably thousands, the average player is going to like all of it.
Right.
They're going to
and even still
20%, and that 20%, they're going to do it in the first week.
What ended up really, like, when you start to look at the analytics, a lot of the people who are like, yeah, like I played and yeah, there was problems, but I continued to play. And they're like, I'm at 2,000 hours. I'm at 3,000 hours. And it's like, you know what? I need a break. Like, yes, you've consumed everything that this game has to offer. And now, unfortunately, you must wait. And then there's always there's a weird thing that I think is baked into us as MMO fans. It's like, you don't want to take a break. And so that ends up causing some friction. You're like, but I want to keep playing. This is where my community is. So my friend just joined and he wants to, and he's going through it now. And I want to be there. But, I also just put in 3,000 hours. Like, that's a lot of time, when it comes down to the balance of these games themselves. Now, one of the things they're doing interesting, this is one of the things that I'm very curious because, especially your perspective, yes, they're going to have dungeons, but they're not instants. Their dungeons actually then exist as a part of this open world as well. And we haven't actually seen that style of dungeon. In a modern MMO, we've seen that's a part of the original offering of the sandbox MMOs, but that's one of the things that they've kind of highlighted where you could just go into a dungeon, and they showed off a couple of them. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about non-instanced dungeons?
So open world dungeons are a thing that are regularly run in New World. There are a couple different areas that act like that in historic MMOs, like World of Warcraft. The one that is still farmed to this day that's very old is the Saltstone Cave in Tanaris. And it is farmed because it is the only place to find the Saltstone set, which is a plate mail set that is equipable in a way that reveals a lot of skin. So it tends to carry a healthy amount of market value, because nobody is a degenerate, and that is why it is worth more than any other plate set. So like these things exist, and it's usually either a density of mobs, and so it's done as a group. The Saltstone's Cave is not particularly hard, or it is something that is done where it is a bunch of elites. And so you can think of areas like that throughout World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy doesn't have that dangerous of an open world, but Guild Wars gets like this as well, where you get into these concepts of like, well, meta events can be very, very dangerous. And so what makes them functional is that a group of players will do this. What's hard about this is a couple of things. First of all, what happens if you take a public dungeon idea? Every game has a spin on it. Some games lean into it heavily, some games don't.
Like Amanda saying that ESO has some public dungeons. So thank you very much, Amanda. Yeah.
So what happens if 200 people show up or 400 people show up? Early, I said Final Fantasy doesn't have it, but hunt trains are the closest thing. Right. Early expansion hunt trains, you have 400 people in the zone. What happens? Is there A, going to be a cap on the zone? B, can your servers handle it? C, will everybody get full credit? And that starts to question things like, will the monster's health scale with the group? And how will it adjust for that? And so seasonal events within New World have this issue. Like, how do you deal with it when 2 billion people show up?
Right.
Because you said public.
Yeah.
So if you say public, hey, there's a guy giving out free steaks and
Let's
anybody's
go.
welcome.
Oh.
You're going to run into fire code. Like, you're going to run into an issue where there's not enough room in the restaurant.
I love free steaks.
Going to go.
Yeah. I love free steaks and I love public dungeons. And so it's interesting because you hit the nail right on the head, when it comes down to scaling. This is one of the things I think has made the public aspect of content, open world content, a real struggle for the MMO, because they either don't do scaling or they never get the scaling right. So it's a hard line, right? But the thing I like about them is also its variability. One of the things that I like about New World is that one of the variety being the spice of life, one of the things that helps change is that in an instance dungeon, the strength is in the curated experience. If we're designing a game and we know that there's going to be only 5 people, these are going to be the roles that they entail, you can build in mechanics and design features that take advantage and maybe challenge those players within a certain piece of content. When you had in that variability that, now there's 200 people, things get crazy. And I think that the perfect balance is offering maybe a bit of both, to have, some of these kind of like battleground-esque, curated experiences. But the open world, what actually makes that interesting, especially over time, is it could just be 5 people or it could be 500. But that comes down into how do you then adjust it? Because I don't think a lot of people would end up having fun is if they go into the dungeon. It would be fun a couple of times where you just kind of, everybody coordinates and you get these just massive murder trains rolling through the dungeon at one point in time.
That's what happens in New World.
It can be a lot of fun. It can be also very community focused, but it would be really cool to see if the dungeon was like, whoa, we got a lot of people here. And because of that, all of a sudden spawns, increase and things get a little bit more wild. And there's going to be a give and take, right? Because sometimes you could be running in the middle of the day and it could only be 20 people. And you don't want it to be like the only way we can ever clear this is if we get everybody involved. But I like that aspect. I like the fact that like you could be running along in the dungeon and all of a sudden, just like with the hunt trains in Final Fantasy 14, one of the exciting things about the open world that I don't feel like Final Fantasy 14 really truly takes advantage of, like Eureka in and of itself, and even Boja, like I thought really took advantage, but that was still instance-based content. But within the open world, it's like when you see the hunt train just coming over the cliff and you just see all the wide, crazy mounts and things like that. It is just something that I think is a joyful moment, because then you as a player, especially as a low-level player, is like, where is everybody going? What's happening? What's going on over here? Same thing with the fates, when you would see them bring in the relic fate grind, etc. Like all of a sudden you just see like swarms of people doing something, and either you're a part of it or you wish that you were a part of it. And that essentially kind of, I think, is a motivating factor, one of those things that drives people forward, and going and going into that. Now, and that's what, yeah, exactly what I was
Force
pointing out,
spawns are
Cosmos.
really hard because the problem is at that
Oh
point.
yeah.
So like WoW has had like anniversary dragons and things like that where they've
Yeah.
tried to make it kind of scale with you. But then what happens is people who just show up and think there's a million people here so I can be lazy, or they show up under geared or something like that. If it scales to add those people in,
then
you're
weakening it. Yeah.
people in, you're actually losing ground. It's like, okay, there's 3 times as many people here, so it only has twice as much life. But the average skill rating here is actually going down faster than that because the people who are joining are just here to be part of this. And that's really neat. So how do you handle that? How do you
auto attacking? Yeah.
Yeah,
well, who knows? Like, I would personally design a mechanic that would wipe those people off the map. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, okay, like if we were anticipating that at least the bare minimum, and if someone is like bare minimum in terms of play, if someone literally is just like, oh, we can detect that they're just auto attacking and AFKing, like that would be how I would do it. Is I would design a mechanic that would detect that and then literally just delete that person, just like, but with a massive attack. And it's like, oh, you died. It's like, okay, yeah. And now, and now you have to be respawned and etc. So that's something that I would think that within game design, who knows, maybe even AI, and as that gets more and more integrated, could actually kind of figure that out and detect that as you as a player. So that's something that would be, I don't know, discouraged over the course of time. That would just be kind of how I would approach it. But we don't know how they are approaching it because we haven't obviously seen it in action. One of the things that will be interesting to see in action is data. Like, is this fun? Are people having fun? Are they abusing it? Is this like, because we've seen, gamers will optimize the fun out of anything, but I go back to Final Fantasy 11 and doing summoner burn parties like in the caves. Like, they were wild, they were fun, it was insane. And yes, it was kind of, boosting your level and cheating to a degree, but it was there. It was like you could do this, and that was something that a lot of people would take part in, and it was just fun because I remember running through like running myself through as a lower level player, and all of a sudden it's like you just see all the monsters swarm and then like them all go down. You're like, what is happening? And learning about what things and people come up with, like by talking and by experiencing it and being witness to it, is pretty cool, as opposed to only just kind of finding all those kind of things out online.
Well, those are kind of the questions I have. I think public dungeons can be really fun. I think chest runs in New World are really fun.
Yeah.
I think EVE Online has made playing with large groups of people like a key component to having the fun.
Yeah.
And those moments when it happens are really fond memories, even if they're crap during. So like it's still important to have them. When you think about hunt trains and fate trains in Final Fantasy, you think about big events in the past like anniversary dragons or AQ or pre-patch events within World of Warcraft where like people are kind of auto attacking because their computers are lagging. Like they can't even render everybody in. It's just shenanigans. Metas in Guild Wars, like those are a key component, and not continuing to develop and foster those would be a huge mistake because it is very community driven. So like I think public dungeons and some sort of public event, public meta, public raid, whatever you want to call it, where lots of people are fighting against something that they're going to overcome through just sheer numbers, is really neat. There's a reason instance dungeons usually accompany this. Somebody wants something that's tuned a little better than like, oh, you guys earned that over 3 hours with 5 people? Yeah, we went in with 50 and it died.
It was dead.
Yeah. And so...
Yeah. That's actually one of the things, like I want to get to Death Danish's comment here because I think we bring up a good point, but that's one of the things I'm looking forward to this summer in New World, because they're adding in the ability to do kind of raid grouping, because they're adding in an instance based raid. And then you couple that with the idea that now you can also take that UI out in the open world for the chest runs and the open world bosses and things like that. Like marry both. You don't like, we don't need to, I mean, this is me spending Amazon's money for free because I can do that. I'm just a commenter here in this case. But like, don't just sit here and prioritize instance content. It's important. You should have it. It adds in value. There's a lot that you can do with that. also have open world content. Merit, like if you make an an instance raid, make an open world raid. If you make an instance dungeon, make an open world dungeon, and then that way players can always kind of choose what fits them for the best, their time choice, and then you kind of get the best of both worlds.
When it comes to balance, my question is, how are you incentivizing something today, and how do you plan on incentivizing something different tomorrow? And is that going to feel really forced? Where World of Warcraft's run into trouble in the past is when it feels forced, that you're like, oh, they don't want me. They want me doing open world quests, which means in order to raid, I have to do open world. It's not encouraged, it's required.
So, yeah, we don't honestly don't. Like, there's things that you have the questions that I think are echoed those throughout the community, because we've seen the information that they've provided, and now we're just patiently waiting for the final test, they call it, out in Korea to be complete before they start rolling out with I would assume their marketing campaign and more. I bet we're going to see a Western beta test. Like, I don't think that it's because they call this the final test that's for Korea, but as a part of the Western market, I'm assuming Amazon is going to have some kind of plan.
It'll be held in Toledo. You have to go there.
Oh man, it will be, yeah. Just why? There's a program like we used like the last time for the media tour Parsec or whatever, that it's like, if you want to keep the code from getting out into people dissecting the whole thing, as a part of any of these, you could be like, yeah, we're going to sign up for this and we're going to do this test, and it's going, we're going to have it a little bit more controlled. It does limit your ability to test a wide range of machines, because that's going to be something that'll be interesting, because that's something we see, a lot with New World. A lot of people might have performance issues because their machines are a little bit on the older side and things like that. Some PvP players are kind of upset based off of what they've decided to do with PvP, and they've made it opt-in PvP. You do not need to participate in PvP.
Opt-in is the best solution for the modern gamer, unless you're building like Street Fighter, and it's like, if I can't,
I'm just here for the PvE.
Fight the guy. We're just gonna hug each other for a match. Like, unless PvP is the core component. Like, I play a MOBA, but I don't play with PvP on. What are you doing? But like, when you were talking about an MMO, even if I'm a hardcore PvP player, there are times that you don't want a PvP. If they have an engaging crafting and gathering system, if they have a cool world to explore, if they have quests worth doing, it might be possible that I want to talk to an NPC, and yes, I am a slow reader, and I'm reading a quest, and then some guy comes up and just slams me. So like, opt-in works. Opt-in works, even for the most hardcore PvP players. And then imagine a world where you have a friend that you want to share this game with who isn't as hardcore as you. So it allows a wider variety of players, which these are games that grow. Yes, the ads work, the Twitch campaigns work, those things are great. But the best people they can get to join this game are people that are coming into an existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Great. So like that word of mouth growth is amazing. And for you to do that, you have to be able to trust that maybe people are friends with people that aren't identical to themselves.
Yeah, and I think what you just said there, I think highlights also the vast importance of them bringing in cross-buy, cross-save into Throne of Liberty. The fact that they have already announced it for consoles, for PC, the stream it to your daggum cell phone. Imagine that level and that power of word of mouth to be able to sit down and say, oh, just download the game. Does it matter what platform I'm on? Not at all. Like, here we go.
Imagine the day if we had browser-based games. My God. What do you do? Oh, just click the link.
Just click this link. You just play. You're playing. I have one other kind of topic for you in and of itself, because I think that pretty much gets you caught up on Throne of Liberty. They've got their closed physical beta at the end of this month, and then essentially we'll shift into March, where I'm being that if they're still targeting the first half of 2023, I think that's when we'll start to see bigger marketing pushes, a lot more detailed information to cover for you guys and things like that. So is there any other final Throne and Liberty questions that you have before we jump into our next segment?
No, I'm just like, it's just about content. It's just about content. And like, at the end of the day, there's nothing they can tell us. They're going to tell us it's an engaging open world. There's plenty to do, and you're going to find yourself on endless adventures. But it's literally just, well, then show me endless adventures, because I have yet to find a game where people can't just consume everything off the vine and then go, well, I ate 600 pounds today, and now I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
Well, who told you to do that?
I played 6,000 hours and, over the course of 3 months. It's, where's the content? It's like, that was the content. We created
How long is that
6,000
supposed to last? Years.
years.
Oh
Years.
no.
Oh. Well, yeah. So it'll be neat to see, because it's, as we always kind of, try to remind everybody, it's not just about launch. It's about how the patch schedule comes out. How's their communication, and how is that relationship with the developers and the players? Because if do they hear, do they understand? Is that communication going well? And that's why, like, I think Amazon makes the absolute most sense as the global publisher. Like, when it comes down to it, that's going to add another big MMO into their catalog. They recently not just partnered, but they actually own the Tomb Raider franchise now. They purchased that from Embracer Group. And I think essentially where you're going to start to see over the course of the next decade is it's going to be pretty wild, especially then when you start to think about their marketing capacity with drops, with Prime, and more. It's going to be one of those games that they'll have constantly in your feed some way. There'll be some way that you'll be hearing about Throne and Liberty at least every couple of months. Something's going to be happening in that regard.